Hello team, welcome to another ATP Geopolitics video with myself, Jonathan M.S. Pearce. This is a Ukraine war news update, the first part thereof for the 15th of August 2025. I'm back in the UK, back home. I've not had any sleep for, I don't know, 40 hours or something. So today's going to be interesting. We left one of our pieces of luggage underneath my wheelchair at Gatwick Airport. Absolutely gutted. So we've got a missing bag. Anyway, the only thing to do is to get on with the video. Having just cleaned out the 12-foot like little pop-up Best Way swimming pool we got that covered in rainwater from when we were away. So the joys of being back home. I've had a cup of tea though. So things are all right. Yorkshire tea. Back in the zone. Although I really miss being away. We had a lovely, lovely time. Anyway, enough of that rubbish. Let's get on with the Ukrainian general staff figures for the Russian losses for the day before, all the usual caveats apply, of course, and you can find them linked in the description below. 940 personnel lost is under 1,000, about where we expect it to be at the moment. 2 tanks, 3 troop-carrying AFVs, likewise, well below the daily average there. 40 artillery systems, pretty decent number in that category. Again, it's fairly up and down, but we are seeing more days of pretty good artillery losses than not. 1 multiple launch rocket system, 140 vehicles and fuel tanks, adding to the pretty large number of vehicles and fuel tanks taken out during this war. The Russians using those to attack more predominantly than traditional combat assets, and then 3 pieces of special equipment. So those are today's stats. We're going to have a little thread from Tatarigami here talking about the 8th Army missing in action cases 2024 to 2025. So they say, or he says, debates over losses are always heated, but hard data cuts through the noise. Frontelligence Insight analysed Russian documents released by the I Want to Live project, giving insight on soldiers of the 8th Army who went missing in action. Here is a thread. So first of all, let's look at the graph here. We can see that April 2025 and around that period, there was a spike in MIA cases that was considerably larger, and indeed from the month before, than the previous year. This is a problem that ostensibly is getting worse, although you can see it also previously peaked. I guess that's in October 2024 before going down over the winter period and then peaking right back up to the 850 mark there. Age breakdown of individuals reported missing in action, mainly 31 to 40 and 41 to 50, but still quite a few in the 51 to 60 category there. Far fewer younger, particularly the very young, 18 to 20, and then even 260 plus. Anyway, let's go and look at the thread. So Tatarigami says from January 2024 to June 2025, so not the most updated figures due to needing to get hold of the documents and whatnot. 6,921 soldiers and officers of the 8th Army were reported missing in action, part of the Southern Military District. The 8th Army has primarily operated in Donetsk Oblast. This is obviously just one snapshot of one part of the army, with elements recently deployed to Pokrovsk to reinforce the 58th Army. Looking at the timeline, losses in 2025 have significantly peaked compared with 2024. The number of monthly MIA cases more than doubled and remained consistent throughout 2025, reflecting the period of active offensive operations, particularly in Donetsk. Among all units, 102nd Motor Rifle Regiment, part of the 155th Motor Rifle Division, leads with nearly triple the losses of other motor rifle regiments, suffering a staggering 1,858 missing in action. The 103rd Motor Rifle Regiment follows with 806 reported missing. From 2024 to 2025, Motor Rifle Regiments in the 8th Army had a median average of 782 soldiers missing in action, while 102nd Motor Rifle Regiment experienced an extreme loss of 1,858, an outlier that significantly raises the overall average to 897 missing in action. Considering the Russian Motor Rifle Regiment can number up to approximately 2,000 people, these MIA figures, combined with then theoretical KIA, so killed in action, wounded in action, and deserters, suggests that the 102nd Regiment may have been effectively wiped out at least 3 times or more since 2024. Absolutely staggering claim. Although I would have thought these missing in, I mean, these are MIA, and then it talks about, it talks about deserters, and I'm deserters and KIA. So I would have thought you're missing in action are going to be made up of deserters and KIA, just fleshing that out. Now, turning to the demographic data, the largest age group is 31 to 40, which aligns with earlier findings on the average age of Russian combatants. Second largest group is 41 to 50. Interestingly, there are more personnel aged 60 and above than those aged 18 to 20. Out of 6,921 missing soldiers, 316 were identified as foreign citizens. That's a pretty large number, I think, slightly over 4.5% of the total. While their citizenships are not listed, the analysis of names suggests the presence of ethnic Chinese, making up about 7% of all foreign losses. We note that this list is not exhaustive. It includes only those eligible for payouts, meaning the actual number could be higher and may lag for other reasons. Moreover, these figures represent only MIA, missing in action cases, and not total losses. So another interesting data point there. Thank you to Frontelligence for putting that together. Here we have Andrew Perpetua's loss list for the 13th, so just 2 days ago now. We have fairly hefty losses of Russian, mainly civilian and ATV equipment. And as you can see, the Ukrainians, if we take out all that surveillance and comms equipment, they're still losing a fair bit of combat assets, and also their civilian vehicle losses are pretty similar to the Russians at the moment, almost 1-for-1 on many days. Let's look at the Ukrainians first, and we're going to go to let's move that out of the way. We're going to go to the top here. We've got a crane truck, we've got a boat, M777 howitzer damage, 2 S-22 Bogdana self-propelled howitzer, and some other nondescript howitzers and whatnot. So a few bits of artillery, single tanker T-72, 3 AFVs, nondescript, an M113 as the only APC, and then we're down to what we see quite a lot of and have done for some time, MRAPs and mobility vehicles. Ukrainians use these quite a lot, and they are finding that they are getting hit quite a bit as well. So Kirpi, a couple of Kirpi, well, in fact, 4 Kirpis, 2 abandoned and 2 damaged. They are provided by Turkey, some other MRAP Senator, the Canadian Cossack, indigenous, I think, and Max Pro American. Then on to IMVs, infantry mobility vehicles, generally lighter, more lightly armored vehicles like Humvees, bunch of Humvees there, Titans, Onsillas, Novator, so on and so forth. And then down to a few trucks, a few ATVs, all-terrain vehicles, and then quite a lot of civilian vehicles. So Ukraine is really using and losing a lot of these near the front line at the moment, no doubt, to drones. And yes, you're seeing a lot of Vandal drones as per normal, night vision FPV drones being used more and more by the Russians. So that is a worry for the Ukrainians. When we get to the Russian loss list, we don't have so much surveillance and comms equipment, though that is due to the Russians putting them in their videos far more than the Ukrainians. It's not to say the Russians definitively take out more surveillance and comms equipment than the Ukrainians. Okay, so we've got a couple of electronic warfare bits of kit, destroyed boat, 3 artillery systems, 3 tanks, including a track guard and shed being destroyed, a couple of AFVs, sort of nondescript stuff, a lot of this equipment, tanks, howitzers, AFVs, without being labelled. A single APC destroyed in MTLB. And then we're down to sort of 4 trucks damaged, quite a lot of motorcycles and a few e-scooters thrown in. That's pretty normal. Some quads as well. And then you're down to civilian vehicles. So I think the Ukraine is having a marginally worse day than the Russians. But remember that yesterday there was a Su-30 SM that was lost. So although that there's no visual evidence of that at the moment, that has been confirmed by Russian sources as well as Ukrainians. So I think we can take it that the Su-30 SM, and I believe both pilots were lost there as well, was taken out. So loss of the Russian Su-30 SM is confirmed by Russian sources. Crew is dead, says Tendar. The Ukrainian Navy intercepted signals which suggest a Russian Su-30 SM crashed somewhere southeast of Snake Island. SAR search and rescue operations by the Russian occupation are ongoing, and debris was found. The whereabouts of the pilots is unknown. So that is good news for Ukrainians, and that will completely change, I think, the loss statistics, because that's a really high value piece of kit. Now, putting together these Su-30 SMs from the 43rd Naval Assault Regiment that have been lost, Militiani says that Russia's Black Sea Fleet has lost over half of its Su-30 SM fighters from the 43rd Naval Assault Regiment since 2022. 7 have been destroyed, 2 have been damaged, from Mykolaiv to Snake Island and Saki Airfield. So they are losing more than they would certainly like to. News that there's been a strike on a Russian brigade command post in Bakhmut. Bakhmut seems to be a place where they are. I mean, you've got some fairly large buildings there, somewhat decently protected, but guided glide bombs are pretty effective. And the Russians, although they have quite a few command nodes, I think, in Bakhmut, they do get hit by the Ukrainians using guided glide bombs, and another one appears to have been hit in the last 24 hours. We await the details of that. Then we hear this morning or today that a Ukrainian has succeeded with a historic sniper shot, a 4,000-meter kill. That's 4 kilometers. A Ukrainian sniper from the Privid group, using AI, successfully fired a shot at a record distance of 4,000 meters, eliminating 2 occupiers in the Pokrovsk-Minarad defense line. The unique hit, without direct visibility, was performed under the adjustment of the drone complex from a Ukrainian-made alligator rifle of the 14.5mm caliber, equipped with a thermal imager. Very impressive indeed. Someone says this is an insane shot, like indirect fire from very nearly 2.5 miles away. It's 4 kilometers. Absolutely incredible shot there from a Ukrainian. Now, we're just going to go abroad for a wee while. We're going to go to the FLA. Now, these are they are fighting for a region called Azawad in Mali, in the Sahel region of Africa, sort of western area of Africa here. That Azawad area at the top there, much more desert than the rest of Mali, that's what they're fighting for. FLA, or the Azawad Liberation Front, which is Front de Libération de l'Azawad. That's why they're FLA. It's a political and military organization in northern Mali, founded on November the 30th, 2024. So fairly recent, but it is formed combining a number of other groups. So these Tuareg rebels are operating in Mali, and they're operating against the Russians. So FLA have released a video warning that the conflict now extends beyond Mali and declaring direct war against Russian forces and mercenaries. This is an interesting development in that region of Russia. And actually, Philip Abaji Jr., I've interviewed him, says a number of Russian fighters died when a convoy of the Russian paramilitary group Africa Corps, so that's what's now replaced Wagner, was caught in a jihadist ambush on August the 1st near Tenenku in the Mopti region of Mali. A regional specialist said at least 14 Russians were killed. And of course, all of this helps Ukraine. The more trouble Russia has anywhere around the world, the more Ukraine benefits. So that's why I report on this. Have they bitten off more than they can chew? I don't know. They're probably getting an awful lot of racketeering money from this region. Right, moving on to distant strikes. So last night, the Russians sent in 99 drones and missiles yet again. I mean, I was saying you could have had a big night of attacks last night because we have the Friday Anchorage, Alaska meeting between Trump and Putin. And I wouldn't have put it past Putin to, in fact, I would have thought he would have wanted to strike Ukraine with an awful lot of drones. They didn't really. It was a fairly typical night, and it's been like that for quite a long time, which leads me to conclude that the Russians are really struggling to hit Ukraine with these massive 600 drone waves or whatever. Um, they haven't done that recently, and I think the Ukrainians have done a fairly good job of trying to take out the supply chain for the production of Shahed drones. Now, likewise, the Ukrainians didn't really hit with a huge wave, but the Ukrainians were very successful last night. We can come on to that in a second. My thoughts would be that Ukraine's probably throwing at Russia everything it can build, whereas Russia is working under capacity because they've had their infrastructure. It actually could be the same for Ukraine. Ukraine could be able to produce more. We know that there's excess capacity. They just need the money. But I also think their military industrial complex probably has been hit fairly consistently over the last 6 months. So both sides are probably throwing at the other side everything they possibly can at the moment. It'd be interesting to see if Russia has been able to stockpile, whether we will see a somewhat larger wave in the coming days. So, okay, overnight, last night, Russia launched 97 Shaheds and decoy drones and 2 Iskander-M missiles at multiple regions. Ukrainian defenses downed, or suppressed 63 drones out of 97. So that is about broadly a 60. It probably is a 2/3 interception rate, 67% interception rate, something like that. 34 drones hit 13 locations, and of course the 2 missiles as well. Now, we do hear from OSINT analyst Brady Afric. He does a lot of trench mapping. He's reported that new satellite imagery shows Russia has built drone launch sites and storage at the southwestern airbase for attacks on Ukraine. Recent images revealed mass drones and hardened shelters. So the Russians are able to launch way more drones, I would have thought, than they presently are. They have even more places that they can launch. This is a worry for Ukraine, having extra infrastructure for drone launches inside Russia. At the same time, they are still unable to fire the massive waves I was talking about. So, this is a worry for Ukraine, but as long as Ukraine can still hit the supply chain that leads to the manufacture of these Shaheds, then Ukraine are doing a good job. But yeah, worrying that they're not just launching them from north of the border now and within occupied regions of Luhansk and Donetsk or behind the borders there, but it looks like they're doing this in the southwestern airbase. So more launches from Crimea or Kherson area, unfortunately for the Ukrainians. Now, the war zone reports that Russia has upgraded their Iskander and KN-23. So the latter is the North Korean version of the North Korean ballistic missile that the Russians have been using. They were pretty inaccurate at the start when they first were getting these from North Korea, but I think they've adapted them now. And we often don't know whether it's an Iskander M or a KN-23 missile that is fired because the signatures are pretty similar. The war zone reports that Russia's upgraded its Iskander and KN-23 missiles, making Patriot air defense systems less effective against them. The missiles are now said to carry radar decoys and that they can fly quasi-ballistic trajectories, combining ballistic flight with maneuvering to complicate interception. So a sort of quasi-ballistic cruise missile type thing, it appears. Ukraine's Patriots are now struggling to intercept enhanced Russian ballistic missiles, says the war zone. Worry. Now, what have the Ukrainians achieved? Quite a lot again last night. They have hit and majorly hit yet another Russian oil refinery. This is in Yanakiev in Donetsk region, and some fairly impressive photos have come out from there. There it is in the early morning today. This is the Syzran oil refinery going up in smoke. Another view from it there, and there are quite a number of flames going off, as you can see. Jason Hart says Ukraine struck deep inside Russia again. Overnight drones hit the Syzran oil refinery in Samara region. In Russia, the facility processes nearly 9 million tons of crude oil a year and fuels the Russian military. Fires rage, cutting directly into the Kremlin's ability to wage war. These are such important strikes that the Ukrainians are managing to carry out. We have some more detail on this target. Tatragami says another highly successful strike hits Russia's oil industry, the main war profit engine fueling the war. Multiple sources of fire and visible smoke from separate locations at the Sizran refinery following a drone attack suggest that the strike was effective and impactful. This is not the first attack in recent weeks. So this week, the Saratov refinery halted operations following a drone strike. Earlier in August, the Moscow Times reported that the Ryazan refinery shut half of its units, and the Novokubishevsk refinery stopped intake after attacks. Based on our visual and preliminary geolocation analysis, which we are continuing to confirm, it appears that the flames are coming out not just from storage tanks, but also the main units area. We suspect that at least 2 critical objects have been damaged, which we will name once confirmed. So really good news again in terms of hitting yet another oil refinery. And that's what it looks like this morning. More footage. The facility of Ryazan is engulfed in flames and some pretty significant clouds coming off of that refinery. RIA Novosti. Then we're going to go, oh no. Okay, so no, sorry, my bad. That isn't the Ryazan oil refinery. This is a gunpowder factory that has totally gone up in smoke and been destroyed. We're going to come back to that. Sorry, that was in the wrong order. So, okay, so the first thing is oil refinery yet again taken out. So already that makes it a successful night for the Ukrainians, sorry. But there is more. There is then next this. Ukrainian strikes have hit a Russian port used for Iranian arms shipments, according to the military. The Olya port is used by Moscow to receive Shahed-type drone components and munitions from Iran, according to the Ukrainian military. We hear this coming from a Russian source that this morning, in the waters of the port of Olya, Astrakhan region, Ukrainian drones attacked the cargo ship Olya 4, belonging to Jamaldin Pashayev. According to available data, in the attack, 14 drones participated. 10 were shot down by air defense forces. Four hit the vessel. It was damaged and sank. According to eyewitnesses, the drones were flying from the direction Azerbaijan. Official structures did not provide information comment. So, it could be that Azerbaijan is helping Ukraine with the use of its skies, or maybe not. But the Ukrainians spreading out their range of what they are attacking at the moment. And indeed, we're starting to see some pretty incredible pictures from this port, which is on the northwest of the Caspian Sea. You can see it there. Okay, so according to General Staff of the Armed Forces of Ukraine, on August 14th, Russian port of Olya was struck. The vessel located in port Olya 4, loaded with Shahed drone components and ammunition from Iran, was presumably hit, and that's what it looks like, not in too good a condition. And just moving on, Tim White says, here's a photo of the Olya 4, as we just saw, dry cargo ship in Astrakhan region. Hopefully its cargo of death is now very wet and irretrievable. But yeah, it is another successful example of a Ukrainian hit from last night. Russian media then woke up to this claim, and the claim we're just about to go through, finally, I've hopefully have it right now, refers to this, an exploding gunpowder workshop at the Elastic plant in Russia, completely destroying the facility. So Russian media report this. RIA Novosti, I presume. A fire broke out in the workshop of the blah, blah, blah. 3 people were injured in an explosion and fired at the gunpowder workshop of the elastic plant in Shilovsky district in the Ryazan region. RIA Novosti Emergency Services reported. They also added that the building of the gunpowder workshop was completely destroyed. Now, I've added this into the hit section because it could well have been a hit or sabotage. Those two are both likely, but wow, the Ukrainians having some success at the moment. And there is quite a bit of footage now coming out of this elastic plant in Lesnoy. So we were fearful of this day, said Tim White, but it started pretty well, I'd say. Pretty well, I'd say. Another misfortune to befall Russia in the Ryazan region, a gunpowder factory denazified itself in this explosion. It's part of the elastic plant in Lesnoy. The site is now closed. 3 people were injured. I mean, there are other claims as to how many people have died. Now authorities, he said a little bit later, Tim White, admit at least 5 have been killed in the explosion at the gunpowder plant, and there are still others under the rubble, and 20 plus more have been injured. Yeah, that is another success for the Ukrainians. Okay, moving on to other bits and pieces. We're going to start with the UN finally getting its act in order by the looks of it and warning Russia of responsibility for sexual violence against prisoners of war. So Russian forces have subjected Ukrainian POWs to electrocution of genitals, prolonged nudity across 72 detention facilities, prompting UN warnings of potential blacklisting. This is what we need the UN to do, which is to start getting some teeth, getting stuck into Russia that somehow still sits on the Security Council, assuming an indefinite permanent seat. So that is a problem. There is a link that I will share to a petition to try and get the UN to kick, or UN nations to kick Russia out. Okay, we're now going to go to this hydroelectric crisis in Ukraine as Ukraine records the smallest water stock since 2015. Ukraine's hydroelectric reservoirs have dropped to their lowest levels in a decade following an exceptionally dry spring. By autumn, Energo promises to accumulate water reserves. So they're going to try and do something about that. Now, going over to Russia, oh, what a difference a year makes, says Jay in Kyiv. A Russian aluminium giant, Rusal, a company that Elon Musk was once courting, reporting apocalyptic earnings for the first half of 2025 with a net loss of $87 million, which is a massive drop from last year and the same period where they made $565 million. So they have basically had an almost 600, well, what we've got, 80, 40, 50, yeah, almost $660 million loss from what they made last year, so taking them to a net loss of 87 million. This is not good news for Russia's Rusal. Aluminium giant Rusal swings to losses due to cost and exchange rate pressure. Now, Max 25 says, reporting from summarizing the Wall Street Journal, about 120,000 Ukrainians who fled the war under Biden's Uniting for Ukraine program will start losing legal status. So I presume that's TPS, temporary protected status, on Friday as the Trump administration lets their 2-year humanitarian parole expire without renewal. So there doesn't seem to be too much appetite to renew that for the Ukrainians who have run to the United States. Now, New York Post, ahead of the Alaska meetings in Anchorage, have this front page headline, and this is exactly what needs to take place in the MAGA's information spheres. The New York Post is doing really sterling work to keep Ukraine at the top of the agenda and to let people know exactly what and who Putin is. Massive capitals for the front page of New York Post, the tabloid newspaper, saying President Trump, this is a dictator. Starting it with the President Trump makes this a very pertinent statement. This is a dictator, and 10 other Ukraine war truths we ignore at our peril. The we part is kind of polite way of saying Donald Trump and those who support him who think the same way as him, really, because it, you know, it starts with President Trump. This is a dictator. In other words, you don't think he is a dictator, but this is a dictator. Ignore Putin being a dictator at your peril. Right, now, talking of Anchorage and Alaska, we have some lovely images coming from the municipal settlement in Alaska. This is Anchorage, Alaska. Hundreds rallied to on the eve of the Trump-Putin meeting. Most of them Americans, some flying in from other states. Streets are washed with flags and signs, car horns blaring in support. Similar rallies lit up Fairbanks, Juneau, and more. So that's really good news. That's quite a good turnout, better than I thought it would be. Lots of flags and paraphernalia, lots of placards and whatnot. Really good news. Appeasement negotiations with an aggressor don't work. History gave us this lesson in 1938, says Euromaidan Press. That's the Munich Agreement. 1 year later, the world was at war. Rally at the US Embassy in Warsaw to remind the world Ukraine is not for sale. Protesting today's Trump-Putin meeting in Anchorage, Alaska. So again, really positive vibes coming out from Anchorage at the moment with some really anti-Trump sentiment and pro-Ukraine sentiment. That's what, and you can go and check all these placards. Russia is a terrorist state, so on and so forth. You can go and check them out at your leisure. And here's just one more. The streets of Anchorage, says Anton Goroshenko, before the meeting between President Trump and Putin in Alaska. Massive flag saying, I stand with Ukraine. Another sort of flag map of Ukraine on it, blue and yellow. Hands off, Russian no more. So that is the sorts of thing that us pro-Ukrainians would like to see. Putin won't stop at Ukraine. Absolutely right. Alaska is ours. And yeah, just lots more of these sorts of placards. Fantastic news there. Okay. Now, moving on to the actual summit. 2 senior US officials say Trump plans to roll out the red carpet for Putin's arrival at the joint base Elmendorf Richardson on Friday and greet him in person. The exact details are still being finalized. So it looks like Trump is going to delight in meeting Putin. This is going to be a big thing for Trump, also a big thing for Putin, but this is where he gets to try and schmooze with Trump, gets to whisper in Trump's ear about what rights Russia supposedly has to Ukraine, justifying the war in Ukraine. And you'd hope that Trump has enough wits about him to recognize what Putin will be trying to do. But actually, they're already trolling. So here's Sergei Lavrov. You can just see him there, turning up a day earlier to Alaska, to Anchorage. Now, he is wearing a CCCP top, if you look carefully here. This is a man who is trolling the Americans. Give even one peaceful explanation as to why Lavrov decided to wear a USSR sweatshirt in Alaska. How is this not purposefully provocative? I don't know why the US just ignores stuff like this. Well, I do know, because they want to appease Russia. It's desperately annoying that they can just push the envelope, the Russians, and get away with it time after time. They are taking a piss out of the US, and US doesn't seem to want to care, or at least the Trump administration. Now, Anton Goroshenko is referring to last night's press conference. It was, just another absolute car crash for Donald Trump. So a reporter asked Donald Trump, do you think this summit and your incentives for Putin could end up rewarding Putin for invading Ukraine? That's the key question that needs to be asked. Do you think that actually everything you're doing at the moment is rewarding the villain? Is not, trying to soften everything, or this relationship up, offering them trade deals on rare earth minerals from Ukraine as well as Alaska, offering them to Russia? Do you think that's a really good idea? Trump says, I don't think it's a reward. I mean, Well, that's okay then. I'll just blithely deny it.
Thank you. Do you think this summit and the incentives for peace you were putting on the table could end up rewarding Putin for his invasion of Ukraine? And what kind of signal do you think that could potentially send to other aggressors?
No, I don't think it's a reward. I think that what we have is a situation that should never have started.
President, thank you.
We have a situation that should never have started. Of course, that's what he always says. And do you know what? This annoyed me so much yesterday. I was so angry with this. And I keep getting angry with Trump, but at some point, someone around him, some bloody aide, has to correct him, has to tell him to shut up and tell the truth. So Max25 reports here, a journalist, are you planning to offer Putin access to rare earth resources at all? Trump says, we have great rare earth resources. We did this as payment for all the money we so stupidly spent on Ukraine. We spent 350 billion. No, you did not. Kiel Institute is showing that the Europeans have now spent over double what you spent, and the US has spent something like $119 million, maybe 125. The Europeans have spent 250 something million dollars. Sorry, billion dollars. The US has not spent 350 billion. And then he says, now Europe spent $1 billion. That's a lot of money. They spent 100 billion. No, they didn't. No, that's close to what you spent. Stop lying repeatedly to the public. That's a lot of money. We shouldn't spend much more than they did. Well, you haven't spent much more than they did. Stop lying. And they understand that. No, they understand that you are lying. And I think that's why we don't spend any money anymore. We don't spend any money. They pay us for everything. So it's people are shocked when they hear this. They don't even understand it. They don't even write about it. We don't spend money, but we spend a lot of time trying to solve the war. If we can end the war, we'll be very happy. He speaks like a child. As for rare earths, it's not important at all compared to I'm trying to save lives. Are you planning to offer Putin access to rare earth resources at all? The actual answer to what was asked is they're not important at all. So it's a non-answer. It doesn't say yes or no. It just says, as for rare earths, they're not important compared to trying to save lives. I mean, I retweeted this and put a corrective on it from the Kiel Institute, etc., really raging about this last night. Honestly, really angry. Are you planning to offer Putin access to rare earths? Anyway, his answer, I go back to please, aides, start correcting Trump. I have these dreams of being a reporter and just hitting him with a really difficult question about, do you think it's appropriate that you are still lying to the public about how much money you have spent when you have spent X and Europe has spent Y and Europe has spent more than you, yet you keep saying to the world that you're spending more than Europe? Why is it that you keep not telling the truth? And why do your aides not correct you when you tell these lies? Do you think it is fair to lie about Europe and denigrate what they are doing and to overinflate what you are doing? I'd love to say that in public to him. Something like that. Just absolutely hit home. Why do no freaking reporters ask questions like that? I know it means I'll never get back into the press ball, but for goodness sake, do the right thing. And then you got Scott Percent here, like saying similar BS. He's the Treasury Secretary who's also going to be present in Alaska.
I want to say that it is time for our European counterparts to put up or shut up.
What do you mean put up or shut up? They put up over double what you've put up, so you can freaking shut up. You shut up. You shut up.
keep saying, oh, the U.S. should do this, U.S. should do that. President Trump has put secondary sanctions or secondary tariffs.
7 months too late. He stopped aid for 7 months in the Biden administration. Don't tell me what Trump has done. Trump has killed Ukrainians.
On India because of their consumption of Russian oil.
The Europeans are working their 19th sanctions packet out, you gargantuan mouldy toenail.
And the Europeans haven't done that yet. As a matter of
Yes, they have. They've done loads of sanctions. They might not have secondary sanctioned India, but they've sanctioned the crap out of Russia way more than you.
fact, the Europeans are buying the refined products that the Indian refiners make. So we need some coordination here. So
This is true. And this is a problem. But it's a problem that cannot be solved quickly because you can't just turn off Russian oil and then find alternatives to Russian oil if you're completely dependent on Russian oil before the war. War starts, you can't just magic alternative oil, and then you've got Slovakia and Hungary. I'll tell you what, Scott Besant, you go and have a go at Hungary. Please go have a go at Viktor Orban. Don't say, oh, Europe keeps doing this, when it's Hungary and Slovakia, two of your mateys, that are doing that. Go and have a go at them. Man.
So, if we are going to have a united front, which will give President Trump maximum
We've been asking for a united front from you for 7 months, and you haven't delivered.
leverage, then I think that our European counterparts need to do their part.
That's bloody insulting. Piss off. Oh, I'm so angry. I'm so angry. I hate lying. I hate lying. I hate it, hate it, hate it. I hate it when the most powerful people in the world lie to the public so blithely. It makes me mad, mad as hell. And then you get the Russians taking the mickey. So this is a propaganda video that Russians have pumped out with two dancers, one dressed in American Stars and Stripes and one in Russian, and dancing together. Together we create the future. All this kind of like space stuff and this. Anton Gerashenko says, before the meeting between President Trump and Putin, Russian propaganda released a video in which a pair of dancers symbolized Russia and the USA. Footage features historical episodes of US-Soviet alliance with all the Soviet achievements predictably claimed by Russian propaganda as its own. And of course, Soviet Union was actually different to the Russian Federation. Anyway, then it gets even more frustrating. So let's hear DJT again.
Yes, please.
Hi, sir. There's new reporting that the Russians have hacked into some computer systems that manage U.S. federal court documents. I wonder if you've seen this reporting and if you plan to bring it up with Putin when you see him later in the week.
I guess.
Okay. I reported this the last 2 days. The Russians have hacked federal court filings, sealed documents, and nicked them off the Americans, right? This is really controversial. The Russians have attacked America. This is a cyber attack on America, and they've undermined America's national security. This should be right. This is proper serious. We are going to be absolutely making sure this doesn't happen again. We are going to be reacting very robustly to Russia having done this. This is an enemy nation or a nation who we are not aligned with attacking us. So this should be dealt with the utmost seriousness. And I assume that that's what Trump is going to do here. He's going to react with the utmost seriousness to this.
Yes, I could. Are you surprised? You know, are you surprised? They hack in. That's what they do. They're good at it. We're good at it. We're actually better at it. But no, I have heard about it. I have heard about it.
What is a point of view? What is a point of view being the leader of the United States? the security of your people should be the number one priority. It shouldn't just be, oh, I heard about that terrible thing that happened. Yeah, they're good at it, aren't they? They're good at it, those guys. Those Russians, oh, they're always doing it. They're always doing it, aren't they, those Russians? Oh, Ruskies. Just cyber hacking, getting all our security details. Oh, it's so Russian, that. Anyway, next question. Just please don't ask me about that again. Next question. I'm not going to answer. I'm not going to answer you. Sorry. I know you're expecting me to answer that, but I'm not going to answer you. Next question. Thank you. Russians reportedly hacked a database and stole US federal documents, and Trump simply doesn't seem to care, says Pekka Kallioniemi. This happened just 5 months after the Trump administration's substantial cuts to US cyber defenses, including programs aimed at countering Russia. Oh, look, we've cut loads of money and cut loads of cyber capabilities. Oh, look what Russia's done. Oh, crazy Russians. So let's get on to some positives. So many heartwarming stories of people being reunited with loved ones with the prisoner swap that took place yesterday. So many heartwarming stories today, yesterday, of those civilians released from Russian jails, but anger must remain over their lost years at the hands of a terrorist state. Ukrainian doctors Igor Kirienko, Igor Nazarenko, and Yuri Shapovalov have suffered in Russian jails for 7 or 8 years. But luckily, they are now freed. And here we have a heartwarming hug between loved ones. The moment a family found their relative had been released. So let's just feel good about stuff. And we're going to actually look at another one. Here we have Irina hugs her husband, Mikhailo, for the first time after his return from Russian captivity. They'd not seen each other for over 3 years. Russians captured Mikhailo in Mariupol and held him in Russia's Tula region. Yesterday, he finally returned home. So let's go and see. So that was nice. And then we have this one, which is a young kid. So Dad, a Ukrainian defender, was held in Russian captivity for 1,207 days. Today, he met his son for the first time after returning from captivity. It's truly heart-wrenching. So let's have another positive video and get some positive vibes for the end of this Hits and Losses video.
Привет, папа. Я хорошо. Давай. Скучал по тебе. Я скучал. Наконец.
А скільки було в полоні?
1207 днів.
Вітаємо!
А вот він, да, папа? Ой, дайте пройти. Боже, дайте пройти. Просто впізнав мого сина. Хто впізнав вас? Ні. Дайте сюди. Убійте, просто впізнав. Як ви має телефон? На ту убійте. Ну, то вам теж.